Welcome to another episode of the Go Flush Yourself podcast with Jared Kirk and Matt Milbauer. Hey listeners, I want to thank our sponsors. If you haven't noticed, we like sponsors that do something in particular, and that's giving back. You'll notice with both of our sponsors, they give back, and that's one of the reasons we really love them. And we hope that you take a look at what they're doing and help support them so they can help support this hobby and sport that we love. First up, Bird Hunter Supply, your go-to for premium hunting gear at birdhuntersupply.com. This family-owned business, run by a husband and wife team from Idaho, is driven by their love for bird hunting, dog training, and the great outdoors. For them, hunting is a treasured family tradition. Think crisp mornings in the field, the thrill of the chase, and those irreplaceable moments with dogs, family, and friends. They've built Bird Hunter Supply to share that passion, curating high-quality gear to help you create your own lasting hunting memories with your crew. Whether you're a beginner or a seasoned hunter, Bird Hunter Supply has you covered with top-notch equipment from dog training tools to hunting apparel, backed by exceptional customer service to make your experience unforgettable. Best of all, they're deeply committed to preserving the wild spaces we love. When you shop at birdhuntersupply.com, you can choose at checkout to direct a percentage of your order to conservation powerhouses like Pheasants Forever, Ruffed Grouse Society, or Delta Waterfowl. Your purchase helps these groups protect vital habitats and sustain the wildlife that makes our sport possible, ensuring hunting traditions thrive for generations. Visit birdhuntersupply.com today. Explore their carefully selected gear and support a family-run business dedicated to both hunters and the outdoors. That's birdhuntersupply.com. Gear up, hunt with purpose, and help preserve the wild. Now let's talk about our next sponsor, Hunt Ready. If you chase birds like we do, you know a great upland vest is one of the most important pieces of gear you own. Hunt Ready builds tough, modular, ultra-light strap vests that are sourced and sewn right here in the USA. Their Deviate and Elevate series use smart, patented designs that actually stay comfortable mile after mile, whether you're carrying birds, water, or extra shells. They're built by hunters for hunters who put in real miles in the uplands. But what really sets them apart is their Pave the Way program. It's a first-of-its-kind initiative focused on getting high-quality vests to the next generation of upland hunters. They accept nominations for kids who are fired up about bird hunting and work to help equip as many as they can so those kids can get out there building real memories with their dog and their shotgun. If you're in the market for a new vest or you want to keep upland hunting alive for kids, check out Hunt Ready at huntready.com. That's HUNTREDI.com. Lastly, but definitely not least, I want to thank all of you patrons out there that support us on Patreon. You keep the lights on month after month. Really, thank you for your support. Links to all of our sponsors and their really cool programs that give back are linked in our podcast description, and credits to our producers. If you're interested in becoming a producer of the show, you can check the link there and find out how. Welcome to another episode of the Go Flush Yourself podcast. I'm Matt, as always, with my co-host Jared. Jared, how's it going?
It's going good, Matt. How you doing?
Oh man, I'm doing good. Just ticking closer and closer to upland season, so
Right.
doing good. We are joined today by a guest, Mr. Jimmy Muller. Jimmy, thanks for coming on the show. And you probably know that name. I'm guessing you know that name because he's the founder of Muller Chokes. Is that right, Jimmy?
Absolutely. How you doing, gentlemen? Good seeing you, Matt. Hey, Jared.
Hi.
Yeah. We are doing well, and we really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you.
So kind of quickly, what's your, like, maybe an elevator pitch of your background and how you got into this business and your knowledge base behind it for the listeners who might not be aware.
Cool, man. So I was born in '69 and shot my first pheasant in 1975 with a 410 using lead fives. And, my brother was 19 years older than me, so he always had a hunting dog for upland. And my dad was always hunting grouse and pheasant. And so that was like one of my first introductions to actually, hunting or wing shooting, other than, squirrels and starlings, with a Red Ryder, and shot my first duck blind a year later when I was 6 years old in 1975. And so basically, upland hunting, I spent a lot of time doing it. And, fast forward many years, I've hunted all my life, I've shot all my life. And my dad was a master wing shooter. My brother's a master wing shooter. I don't remember them hardly ever missing. Well, for whatever reason, I didn't get a lot of shooting in when I was young because there weren't as many birds. And I struggled hitting stuff flying, you know. So come 1992, my dad's friends were talking about sporting clays and everything. And so I said, you know what? I've got to get into that because I've got to become a better wing shooter because I'm really struggling. So I started sporting clays, and I wanted to have the best of everything that I could afford to make sure that if I was missing, I knew it wasn't me. I knew it wasn't the accessories, the guns, the chokes, the ammo. I wanted to make sure that, all of that was nailed down. So I ended up buying two of the most well known chokes in the market back then, two modifieds, because that's what I was told to buy, because it was sort of like the everything all around. And I went and I patterned them, and one patterned like a skeet and one patterned like a modified. And I'm like, what is going on? What? It must be mismarked, right? So I'm a master tool maker and engineer and metallurgist and all that stuff. So I'm like, they must have electro etched it wrong. So I went in the shop the next day, I mic'd it, and it was 20 thousandths for my bore. Both of them were, which blew my mind because how could one pattern like a skeet and one pattern like really it was patterning like closer to a full choke? How could they pattern that different if they both measured 20 thousandths from my bore? And I thought, oh my gosh, my barrels must be bad, right? So I took the chokes out of the barrels, I shot paper, and they both patterned almost identical, just barrels, threads, no choke. So I put
Mm-hmm.
the chokes back in and repeated the process with even different ammo, and I was still getting that huge variation. So then I went and bought another one from the same company, and the next one patterned like an improved cylinder. Make a long story short, I had to buy 10 of them to get two to pattern right. And all of them measured between 19 thousandths and 20 thousandths from my bore, which is, by definition, modified choke.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so upon a lot more examination, I found that it was actually the geometries in the choke that were totally off. They were out of round, eccentric. The parallel length and taper length were different. Gasker clearance was different. Surface finishes were different. And those were actually what created the patterns, not just the exit diameter, which absolutely blew me away because that told me immediately a choke is not a choke based on pure definition of what everybody goes by. And that is what got me into creating my own chokes way back then. Um, and what I learned in a very quick period of time was that every gun pattern is entirely different. Whether you take the choke out of it or put a choke in it, they all pattern totally different. Meaning, if you don't have a choke in any of the barrels, they pattern different. So then you can imagine when you put a choke in the guns, if you use the same geometry and the same exit diameter, it's impossible for them to pattern the same way, right? So that's what got me into making chokes. And, the upland bird hunting's always been a passion of mine. And I've spent a lot of time trying to teach people about over choking and ammo and ballistics and everything. So that's what's pretty much gotten me to this point.
Excellent. And from what I think I read on your website, you were in aerospace as a mechanical engineer for a little bit and defense contracts and whatnot. I mean, it gives you clearances there and specs there when it comes to it are, have to be minimal compared to a lot of other industries. So I imagine that background is critical for what you're doing now, right?
Yeah, I actually went to trade school as a machinist. I graduated in '88. And in '88, I got hired as a pre apprentice at an aerospace defense company. and I worked there for 19 years and became a master tool maker and basically started my own machine shop after that and still did all aerospace and defense manufacturing, millionths of an inch tolerance, a lot of DARPA classified projects, and F-22s and Black Hawk helicopters, nuclear subs, Hubble telescope, lots of weaponry and lots of really cool stuff. So that's what I do, and that's what I did all my life. So in 2008, when the economy tanked, I lost all 53 customers that I had in aerospace, defense, and medical. And I knew that I had created the best choke in the world because I had created a choke that fixed every problem a choke tube had. And I used it for my own advantage. I never let anybody touch one or handle it because they would have known immediately that something was amazing about it, because it was actually half the weight of titanium. So it's called the Featherlight. So in 2009, I decided to patent it, see if it would help pay the bills. And I brought it out of the closet at a Christmas sporting clay shoot in December of '09, and it literally just took off. And in 2 years' time, basically revolutionized sporting clay chokes all over the world. So it was really, really awesome.
Yeah, what a great story.
Yep.
Wow. Um, well, anyone who listens to our podcast knows that Jared, over between the two of us, all both of us are this way. Jared is definitely the ballistics and choke tube nerd more so than me. So, Jared, what questions do you have for Jimmy now that we have his background out there and folks know who he is?
Oh, I mean, so much. I
I'm sure.
so many. So I've listened to a couple of your podcasts you've done with I think it's Metal Valley or Middle Valley.
MVM.
Oh, Mid Valley
Yeah,
Mercenaries,
that
MVM.
guy. Yeah, I was gonna
Yep,
get there
yep.
eventually.
Titus and all those guys.
Yeah. So I kind of find it kind of because I've always been kind of like the slower velocity guy.
Yep,
I always prefer slower velocity. It's harder to find now,
that's
in this
awesome.
day and age.
Yep,
But that's been kind of my go-to. Has always been slower velocity, bigger payloads, kind of stuff. So it's kind of interesting that it seems to be you're on the same vein as that, which is I thought was kind of interesting. Very cool. Um,
absolutely.
so the one thing that I've been kind of having and I guess because I was a lot big of a bigger duck hunter, and then kind of more recently got into the whole upland stuff, and so trying to get into the bigger payloads, um, and slower velocities a little bit harder, like I said, and then trying to get the right pellet size too, for hunting, like because where we're at in Washington State, when we're hunting, you could run into a quail, pheasant. I mean, ducks, all in the same kind of vein. So trying to find that good balance of proper shot size, payload, and all that stuff to be able to shoot a quail and not destroy it, but still be able to drop a pheasant, um, has been kind of a little bit of a not so much struggle, but just trying to find the right kind of combination of all of those things. Um, so what would you recommend for someone that can shoot a quail all the way to a pheasant, especially shooting like a steel? Like what would be
Yep,
your kind of recommendation for that?
yep. So I guess it all comes down to about how far you plan on shooting the pheasant.
Sure.
If you're shooting them here in New England or anywhere on a flush, you're using a dog and you're flushing birds close.
Mm-hmm.
My dad never let me take anything bigger than a 28 gauge a 20 gauge into the woods. And most of my life, I've used a 410 or a 28.
Mm-hmm.
And even with those sub gauge guns, if I was shooting lead, obviously I would be shooting 7.5, believe it or not, and
Mm-hmm.
that would take care of all my quail, my chuckers, my pheasant, my grouse, my woodcock. It would pretty much just cover everything.
Sure.
But then, if you want to shoot non-toxic and you're going to shoot steel, I would highly recommend number 6. And
Okay.
the reason for that is you could get a good heavy payload that has a tremendous amount of pellets, and a steel 6 will penetrate a pheasant easily at 35 to 40 yards with no
Okay.
problem. And then it's not an overkill, if you're shooting quail or grouse or anything closer either, as long as you're, provided you're using the right choke.
Sure. Okay. That's kind of interesting because I've been because I think I fell maybe not victim to, but like a lot of people that went to steel, you always had there was that old adage of like go too higher than what you would with lead.
Yeah,
Uh,
totally false.
Yeah, so I originally, like, again, coming from the duck hunting world, I shot a lot of number twos for a while.
Yep.
Um, I've started, I think last year, I think I shot steel fours the entire time. Little fat, like the load I picked was a little faster than I wanted to, but it was harder to find, and I was able to get it locally because I think I was shooting fours at 1450.
Yep.
Um, I found some, I think Salt Creek Custom Ammo makes some fours at I think 1275.
Yep.
Um, and I have some of those. I wasn't able to get them till after the season, so I'm going to try those this year. But I was actually looking at getting some number sixes at that slower velocity and trying some of those out too. And I shoot predominantly a 12 gauge, so I shoot mostly ounce and a quarter and ounce and 3/8.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So you could get away with even a number seven, but to be honest with you, even though a number seven will kill a bird, you
Mm-hmm.
can end up with a lot of pellets in the bird, and you
Yeah.
don't want to be chewing on number seven. So the number six and the load you're talking about is going to be
Mm-hmm.
more than you'll ever need. If you were hunting out Midwest, shooting wild birds out in Nebraska and the Dakotas and stuff, that would be a totally different ball game.
Mm-hmm.
But for flush birds, you could get away with a steel six and pretty much take care of everything you need.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I guess going back into the whole choke thing, because again, I've listened to a bunch of your episodes and stuff like that.
Thank
And
you.
a lot of what a lot of you say, and just so you're aware, I do have one of your chokes. I just actually I got it a couple weeks ago.
Awesome.
I picked up a decoy for my Remington 870 12 gauge.
Yep.
Haven't shot it yet, but I do. I did buy one.
Good
Um,
deal.
because predominantly before that, I've shot a Carlson for I think like 10 or 15 years.
Yep.
But I got a new gun. I'm like, all right, I need a new choke. Let me check out some different ones. And so I was like, all right, I'll check Mueller's out and try one. Very nice choke. Like I said, I haven't shot it yet, but I've heard good things. So
Cool.
I'm
Thank
pretty
you.
excited to get it out.
Thank you. Yeah,
Um,
Carlson made really good chokes. Scott sold the business several years ago, and
hmm
things have changed obviously since then. But that decoy choke, you're going to absolutely love it. It's you know, obviously I developed it, I invented it,
Sure.
I perfected it for all the different guns, and decoy choke has actually become one of my favorite chokes out of all the different chokes I make. I won 5 Sporting Clay high overall
hmm
championships with that choke when I started using it for Sporting Clays,
Okay.
because I did obviously a lot of duck hunting, a lot of upland bird hunting, pigeons, doves, you name it. Went to Argentina, actually broke a record in Argentina last year. Shot 2,025 doves in 3.5 hours using
It's a lot.
using the decoy choke, and I was shooting doves from 20 yards out to 66,
Wow.
and that decoy
Mm.
choke did it, even though it's only about 7,000 constriction
hmm
on average, depending on the gun. Of course, they
Sure.
vary from 4 all the way up to 11,
Okay.
based on what the gun likes best and the geometry. But that decoy choke is absolutely phenomenal on all your upland, all your puddle ducks, all your sporting clays. It's just one of those from in your face out to pretty much as far as most people normally shoot, you know?
Sure. So going to, like, somebody that's just like just got a new shotgun or whatever like that, comes with the factory chokes. Like, when someone makes a decision, because I mean, like, buying the gun, that's your initial investment, and then you, like, starting out, if you're a gun person, you're like, I got to start buying other stuff. Um, so what would make someone go from, like, hey, my gun comes with 5 chokes. Why do I need to get a different, like, aftermarket choke? Like, what is the actual, like, the why behind it, I guess.
Yeah, so there's a few whys behind it. The most important reasons are, basically factory chokes, like a lot of things. If you think of OEM or factory,
Mm-hmm.
basically if it comes with it, the reason it comes with it is because it's very inexpensive, right?
Sure.
You're not going to invest a lot of money into a OEM choke,
Sure.
which would have to jack the price of the gun up to where people wouldn't buy the gun, right?
Makes sense.
So they're spitting those out of soft material with really bad geometries, and certainly not gun specific pattern geometry like I created for the gun it's in. They make them all the same. And they just spit them out of screw machines into big bins. There's the geometries are all over the place. They don't pattern consistent. You get a lot of inferiorities. In other words, if you shoot like even big lead shot out of some of those factory chokes,
Mm-hmm.
they'll actually swage threads in the barrel. You'll never get them out. Never
Mm-hmm.
mind big steel shot, forget it. Or tungsten, or I've even had factory chokes while shooting bismuth.
Yeah.
So you got to be really careful with factory chokes, pretty much across the board. There
Sure.
are a couple gun manufacturers that make a couple that are hardened,
Mm-hmm.
but those are in very expensive over and under shotguns where they can afford to put those in it. But most guns you get factory chokes in. I would never shoot a factory choke for a lot of reasons. Number one, you never know what pattern you're going to get. You don't know what your shot string is going to be.
Sure.
Your margin of error and your shot to shot deviation is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And your margin of error is usually either way too small for what it's marked, or your pattern's just so inconsistent with
Sure.
so many holds and a hot core and no outer fringe, you're just handicapping yourself left and right. So the aftermarket choke is going to give you a way better pellet count, a
Mm-hmm.
much bigger margin of error if you use the proper choke and the proper ammo. Your hit to miss ratio goes through the roof. Cripple ratio goes way down. They're more ethical. It's just way better all the way around.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. And then you kind of mentioned like patterning and stuff like that, and that's something that I've done in the past. I
Yep.
haven't done it. I plan to do it with your choke and stuff like that. But one of the things when I was listening to your podcast, you could say that you pattern a little differently than I've done in the past. Not saying, I mean, because what I did is I think what a lot of people do, they shoot one shot, do the 30-inch circle, then the 20 and 10 or whatever like that, and just kind of count pellets. Um,
Yes.
and then that's what I've done. It's very exhausting to fire X amount of rounds at, 5 rounds at 40 yards. That's 5 pieces of paper. Then I do it 35, and then it's a lot.
Yes.
I know you do it slightly different, and I was kind of interested because you fire 5 rounds ish at one piece of paper.
Yep. So
And yeah, I wanted to just know your thought process behind that.
yeah, so what I learned a long time ago is shooting paper, because it's only one dimensional.
Mm-hmm.
It's good for point of impact to make sure the gun shoots where you're aiming or looking
Sure.
or pointing, right? And it also gives you a good idea of the diameter and size of your pattern.
Sure.
But shooting one dimensional paper, the only thing you know is every pellet in that shot shell is going to go through the paper, but you
Right.
don't know when or how they got there. You cannot see that.
Right.
So what I started implementing in with my paper patterning to make sure that I was getting what I thought I was seeing,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes I wasn't, is I would take the pattern, I would draw, basically 2 circles, sometimes even 3 circles. I would do like 12, 24, and 30. Sometimes I would do 20, 30, 40, all different diameters based on how far I was going to shoot,
Sure.
and what I was actually intending to use it for.
Gotcha.
And then I would put a cross through it. So it would give me basically 12 quadrants, right?
Okay.
Um, and then I would basically fire more than one shot, usually five. And the reason for that is I wanted to make sure that I had um, gotten rid of the margin of error. A lot of times we'll fire one shot and we're off center, and
Mm-hmm.
then our pellets are sometimes off the paper, and we're spending all this time trying to do this and count, and we're getting all different numbers and we can't understand why. Then the other thing involved with patterning is because you've got a lot of different pellets, not a single projectile, every shot is going to be somewhat different.
Sure.
Regardless of how good or how bad the choke, every shot is going to be different because it has to be, right?
Right.
Um, so then what I decided based on what I was getting for results on high speed photography, shooting water, shooting mud, shooting live birds, shooting clay targets, in all different controlled situations from literally, 15 yards out to 110.
Mm-hmm.
I was starting to realize that if I only shot paper and counted holds, I wasn't seeing the whole picture.
Sure.
So that's what I would do. I would shoot the paper. I would fire usually 5 shots at one sheet, I would do the pellet count average and
Mm-hmm.
then divide it by the amount of pellets in the shells, right? And that would give me a much more solid ratio and a much more even and accurate percentage
Okay.
versus just firing one shot at a piece of paper that could be off and all this stuff, right?
Sure.
It basically, it not only averaged just pellet count from that one shot, but it averaged pellet count and took away a lot of the margin of error and deviation, shot deviation. So it gave me more accurate pellet efficiency rather than just one shot. And
Gotcha.
then what I would do is I would take whatever I thought was going to be what I wanted, and I would take those out and I would shoot decoys on water or, lobster pop buoys or whatever have you. I would
Uh-huh.
shoot things on the water. I would video what that shot string looked like. Was it short? Was it long? Were there a lot of flyers in the pattern hitting the water outside where they should be? And, I learned a lot by doing that. And when I coupled that with high speed photography, it really opened my eyes to what pattern efficiency really was and what it could be versus, what we're only seeing on paper.
Gotcha. Okay, so going back to the the pattern thing, what determines, I guess, a good pattern, especially for like someone like upland bird hunting?
Yep. So what I learned is obviously if the shot string is short
Mm-hmm.
versus long, that's going to be very beneficial, especially if the bird is like on the ground or on the water, like a crippled duck or something,
Mm-hmm.
or if it's a bird running on the ground or standing on the ground. Any horizontal surface, it's much more important to have a short shot string.
Sure.
Because if you have a long shot string like a torpedo or a string of spaghetti, you're not putting pellets on the bird. If you have a short shot string, it's like dropping a pancake on the bird. You're just smoking it, right? Because a lot of
Gotcha.
pellets are hitting the bird versus stringing out.
Right.
And these are the things that you can see on water or shooting mud, shooting horizontal surfaces. I actually used to lay down rolls of red rosin paper. I would buy
Mm-hmm.
big rolls from Home Depot and I
Yeah.
would roll them out, like 30, 40 yards long sometimes. And I would fire from different elevations at that
Mm.
horizontal paper on the ground.
Okay.
And that was another way I could really see pellet count and shot string length, and then I could take it from there and go out and shoot live birds in the air.
Mm-hmm.
Compare a short shot string to a long shot string. And what I found out was that if the shot string was shorter, I was actually having a larger margin of error than if it was a long shot string. Because if you visualize it
Mm-hmm.
in sort of a one dimensional way, if it's like a string of spaghetti, you've got to be very accurate. But if it's like a round garbage can lid, you've
Mm-hmm.
got a lot more margin of error. And that's the difference between a short and long shot string. So even though when they're in the air flying,
Mm-hmm.
if you have a long shot string versus short, there's a good chance you may still hit them. But with the short shot string, you're going to hit them with more pellets and you're going to
Okay.
have a bigger margin of error. So
Sure.
it translates to a more ethical kill, a bigger margin of error, and a better kill.
Okay.
So what I'm sure choke and choke geometry determines shot string. Does anything in the shell determine that as well?
Absolutely. So if the choke does have a lot to do with it based on geometry, surface finish, the bore diameter and the barrel of the shotgun, the amount of constriction you're shooting. I mean, all of that plays into that factor. But the other
Mm-hmm.
thing that's also a very big factor is the quality of the pellets and the
Mm.
velocity, the wad, the primer, the crimp on the hull. I mean, there's a lot of things that actually change shot string and pattern.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned that when I started reloading years ago. I was actually blown away by how different components worked, right? So it's
Hmm.
it's really a big um, conglomerate of different things that can accumulatively affect your patterns and your shot to shot ratio, basically your hit to miss and your cripple ratio. So what I did learn in regards to shorter shot string and more uniform patterns and more consistent was that if the pellets were extremely round and polished, um, your percentages and your shot string length was better. If you took that same exact load with the same components, same good wad, same good powder, primer, hull, everything, if you started to increase velocity, your pattern started to open up prematurely without changing any other scenario or any other item. So that was where I started learning velocity was not my friend, right? The moment I exceeded 1250, I could really start to see a big impact. The moment I exceeded 1300, it became, increasingly aware, right?
Mm-hmm.
Noticeable. So then, after shooting velocities from 900 feet per second all the way up to 1600, using inferior components and using superior components, I could really get a good taste of what was affecting what and what the magic combinations were. And the magic combinations were basically, a good wad, consistent powder, and really good polished round shot that was consistent in size, round within, a thousandth of an inch, and
Mm-hmm.
also consistent, you know, and that's what really helped out. And then when I had velocities that were below 1300, that's where things really got nice. And to be honest with you, 1145 to
Mm-hmm.
1200 is really a sweet spot, regardless of pellet material.
Hmm.
Steel, lead. These days we're going to start having copper, bismuth. The problem with bismuth is there was only one brand that was sort of round and hard or
Mm-hmm.
round and tough. Most bismuth that was out there were out of round, inconsistent
Yeah.
in size, shape, and mass. So you had a lot of flyers and really inadequate, patterns. So the reason that we do good with steel and lead, we can control both of those and make them round and consistent.
Right.
Therefore, the mass is the same.
Yeah, because wasn't that Boss had like a patent on copper plated bismuth, and that's what allowed it to keep its shape and also have the density of bismuth?
Yeah, I mean, copper plating, zinc plating, nickel plating, all that
Yeah.
stuff, it doesn't do a lot ballistically. What it does
Oh.
is basically some of the materials actually sort of are more they have more lubricity. So
Mm-hmm.
they pass through feathers easier.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Okay.
my opinion, that's the best part of doing, platings, you know. But you can plate stuff all you want. If the shapes are inconsistent and the mass of the pellet's inconsistent, it doesn't matter what kind of plating you have on it, you're going to end up with a bad pattern.
Right. Because I could be wrong, but some of the first bismuth stuff, that stuff wasn't even round for a while. Um,
Correct.
it was just all kinds of weird shapes.
Yep.
Um,
The way you make it, it's really hard to make it round.
Yeah.
So
right.
they are inconsistent.
Okay. All right. So going into pellet shape, what do you, and I'm not gonna, everyone knows like the companies that make them, but there's two specific companies that make pellets that are not specifically round. One of them looks like Saturn, and then one of them is like a square.
Yep.
Again, I'm not going to say the names of those companies, but everyone
Yep.
knows what I'm talking about. What are
Yep.
your thoughts on those when it comes to patterns and stuff like that?
So again, those square pellets or whatever you want to call them,
Mm-hmm.
if you look back at the 1950s, you could actually Google it. Remington created square pellets to be
Mm-hmm.
flyers for skeet shooting. So you
Yeah.
could get a really big open pattern, almost like a spreader load.
Yeah.
And they actually banned them for competition in skeet because it was an unfair advantage because they spread out so much.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have a ammo company that is trying to market something like that these days to be an extended distance um, hunting load for game, I think that it's a shame that they would do that because it is unethical, and it's not ballistically efficient. So, big companies like that, they don't need to come up with those gimmicky things to try to
Right.
sell more. They do great the way they are
Right.
with the real ammo. And
Right.
so that's what I think about those. That's if you want to shoot birds inside 25 yards and you
Uh-huh.
don't know how to shoot very well, then it's probably a good load, you know.
Right.
But if you're going to shoot beyond 25 yards, don't even bother.
Sure.
The other ones with the rings on them, that's the same type of marketing. So what the ammo companies did was they got smart, and basically that ammo is an unfinished pellet that was molded. So they ended
Okay.
up being able to buy those in mass quantities extremely cheap and then put them in a shot shell and market them as being, traumatic and,
Right.
great wound channels and
Yeah.
ballistically superior to any other steel shot in the market
Sure.
because of the rings. And again, it's a company that didn't need to do that, but with their marketing and with their, slogans and gimmicky stuff,
Sure.
it took off and they did great with it on sales. But
Right.
the fact is, um, the reason that a lot of times you'll find that ringed pellet in the birds versus the regular pellets that are in the shot shell with it
Mm-hmm.
is because if you measure them with a micrometer and you weigh them on a gram scale,
Mm-hmm.
the ringed pellet is one full shot size heavier and larger
Makes
than
sense.
what's on the box.
Right.
So what's happening is those pellets are actually, connecting and penetrating, and that's why people think they're incredible. It's not incredible. It's just, bigger shot size, so they're penetrating farther shots. The
Right.
problem is you don't have enough of them to make it ballistically efficient, and plus because they have rings on them and they're shooting them at velocities beyond that 1300 mark, you're
Sure.
getting a lot of flyers in the pattern. The reason that a lot of these ammos work with a lot of people, which is how they end up becoming trendy
Mm-hmm.
and have followings, is because 90% of duck hunters and upland bird hunters never shoot past 35 yards.
Right.
Mhm.
They think that they're shooting at 50, but they're not. I assure you they're not. And the reason I know that is I've hunted with thousands of people on the beaches and in the blinds and over dogs, and I'm an instructor. I've taught a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
so I've seen it, I've experienced it, and plus, I have a lot of range finders, and I go to shows and I range find a bunch of stuff in a room, and I write it all down, and then I ask people, how far they think stuff is,
Mm-hmm.
and just from that interaction, I can promise you, 95% or more people have no idea what distance is.
Oh, correct.
Yeah.
So
I'm probably one of them for sure.
we're all guilty of it. I mean,
Yeah.
I use a rangefinder all the time. I'm very good with it, but I still get distances wrong
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Never mind
Yep.
somebody that doesn't do it.
Yeah.
You know?
No, for sure. And as long as people understand that they aren't good at it, that's when you can start, if you think you're good at it and you're not, that's where the problems come in, I guess is what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
That's
Yep.
So,
true.
so Jimmy, with all this marketing, and then marketing's out there for every product we're out there looking for, whether it's in the hunting world or, you know, it's a soda. But
Yes.
um, if I'm just me, I'm gonna go to the store. I'm not gonna reload my shells. I'm gonna go to the store and pick up some shells. I have brands that I like because I've had success with them, and based on listening to people like you and reading things online and trying to be somewhat educated on the matter. Earlier, you brought up, they need to be as round as possible. The powder needs to be good, the high quality wad. Marketing out there, if you're not an expert in this, like I don't know what a high quality wad is because everyone has a high quality wad according to them, but they're all different, right? So how does one start going down that road to really understand what that is? Is it really that you need to dig, if you really want to get into it, you need to dig deep and educate yourself on what a good wad is, or is there at least maybe an easier way for someone who just wants to get the best shell they can so they can hunt ethically as possible, can go out and buy some on the shelf?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's a really hard thing to answer because
Yeah.
the easiest way to do it these days is because I'm out there talking a lot. I've got a lot of videos out there. We do a lot of podcasts with people like yourself. We've got a couple other people that are out there talking about it. At least people are talking about it now, so
Yeah.
people can actually access this material. And what I try to teach people is I have reinvented the wheel. I have perfected it when it comes to chokes and ammo and shotguns. Um, and if I say something and I recommend something, there's a reason for it, and
Sure.
if I don't recommend something, there's a reason for it. So if you could find the videos where I talk about these things, like on your podcast, it helps people tremendously, because then you don't have to go out there and buy all the wrong stuff to find out that it was no good, when
Mm-hmm.
I already told you what to buy and what not to buy, or at least what to buy. There's really only, gosh, there's only a handful of good ammo that's being made right now. Regardless of what pellet material, there's
Mm-hmm.
only a few out there that are good for each one, and some of them are not good at all. So it's pretty easy. The other thing I ask people to do for themselves, which is a really good thing to do, you can actually buy a box, right? Which isn't too expensive for most people. You could buy a box, all different types of ammo that you think may be good because they're well-known brands, and you may think it's good based on the marketing or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Take them home and cut some open and dump it out. Buy yourself a gram scale on Amazon, and dump the shot out into a gram scale, an ounce scale, and weigh the shot. See if it's what it is on the box, which a lot of times, sadly, it's not.
Sure.
Um, and look at the quality of the pellets. I mean, are they consistent in size visually? Not everybody has a micrometer or a pair of calipers, right? But look at them visually. Do they all look the same? Are they round? Do they look like slag, where you have like dumbbells and teardrops and all different size pellets? Obviously, that's not going to be a good scenario, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Sadly, you got a lot of that out there with a lot of big companies that are claiming to be the best. There's certain companies that have a lot of fanboys say that they're the best. They're absolutely one of the worst in the industry across the board. So you really got to cut things open, look at them for yourself. Or if you hear what I recommend, you could just go that route, knowing that I'm not paid by people. I'm not in
Mm-hmm.
anybody's pocket. I'm not sponsored by anybody. A lot of people don't like me because I tell the truth. And the people I tell the truth about that have good product, they like me because I'm helping them get the good stuff out there, you
Right.
know.
Right.
So that's one really good way to do it. Obviously, if you don't know about components, you don't know the difference between a good wad or a bad wad, right? Basically, if you want a long distance shot pattern, you want a wad that's thick, not thin. You
Mm-hmm.
want it to be the full length of the shot load. You don't want BBs out of the wad.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want the wad to have short pedals, and you don't want to be thin, like I said, because if it's thin and it's short, and if it has full length slits in it, it's going to separate from the shot column very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the definition of a skeet load, something for close. If you want a long distance hunting load for far pheasant or ducks or geese, where you're shooting beyond 35, beyond 40, beyond 50, you want a wad that's thick, full length, so all of your pellets are in the wad, and you don't even really want a full length slit wad, but most people slit them full length these days if they're not hand loading. But
Mm-hmm.
if you cut a shot shell open and that wad is like really thin and flexible, and the pellets are all different shapes, you could rest assured, especially if the velocity is over 1250 or 1300, you can rest assured it's only really good out to 25 or 30 yards max efficiently. You may
Sure.
kill stuff beyond that once in a while, but it's not an
Right.
ethical load beyond that distance.
And that's actually a really good point. I was in manufacturing for about a decade, and I know that companies will spend money on QA and quality assurance to and that money is spent as essentially insurance on themselves, right? To understand that that product's not going to come back and it is what they say it is.
Yes.
And some companies would rather just not pay for that or pay less for it and take that risk, right? It depends
Hmm.
on
Yes.
what their business model is based on. And so if you open up a shell and a handful of them and they're all measuring what it says they measure for the most part and they visually look like the shot looks visually round and good quality and the wad like you said isn't cheap and is thicker, then you know that they're putting the money in up front and probably are also paying for quality assurance to understand that the things going out are what they say. And when they're not, then you know they're probably not paying for it, or the tolerances they're allowing for through their quality are low to save money up front, knowing that it's not going to come back because most hunters just shoot it and don't think too much about it. Um,
Yeah.
and you don't have to worry. So that's actually a really good point. Open one up, open a few up, and see if the quality's there. And if it is, then at least you know the company's trying to do the right thing. I think that's a really good sign if you're an average hunter like myself, just trying to buy the best out there that's going to give you the best
Hmm.
chances.
Yeah, I basically I'll take a flashlight or a bright light and I'll look through the hull
Hmm.
up near the crimp, and if I see
Hmm.
a lot of pellets above the wad, I already know that the wad I already know it's not going to be a good load because
Sure.
most of the pellets that are not in the wad are going to end up being flyers, because they're going to end up being damaged and outside the shot cup. So they're going to start to leave as soon as they leave the muzzle, they're already escaping the wad, right? Because they're not
Right.
even in the wad.
Right.
Right.
So what happens is they end up on the outside of the pattern immediately. The other
Hmm.
thing is if you look at a lot of loads today, even some of the well-known brands, going back to what I just said about all the pellets being inside the wad, inside the shot cup, if you look at a lot of them, you will see that a lot of people are like even using a 1 ounce wad for a 1 3/8 ounce load.
Hmm.
I mean, not cool at all, but they're
No.
doing it because it's cheap, it's easy, it loads easy, it crimps easy. They
Sure.
don't tell you why they do it. They just tell you that they're doing everything amazing,
Right.
and they're not. They're doing it. They're doing it so it loads easier and quicker for them with less scrap rate and
Hmm.
less downtime. And they know that people don't know any better, and they know that people aren't cutting stuff open and looking at it. And even if people do pattern, people don't really even know what they're looking at when they do pattern.
Sure.
Right.
So all these ammo companies know that. They also know that 88% of hunters never patterned a shot shell in their life. So you know, look at turkey loads, right?
Yeah.
Turkey loads, doesn't matter what company. Let's just talk about lead turkey loads for a second.
Sure.
If you look at every lead turkey load in the industry, whether it be all the big box brands, the Remingtons, Winchesters, Federals, whatever,
Sure.
the first thing you notice when you look at turkey loads, heavy payload,
Yep.
slow velocity,
Yep.
always under 1,200 feet per second,
Yeah.
sometimes 1150
Right.
feet per second, and thick wads, full shot cup.
Yeah.
Why do they do it? The reason they do it is because they know that turkey hunters are
Yes.
very, very picky about patterning.
Yeah.
And they also know that turkey hunters are patterning far. And they also know turkey hunters, if they don't get a good pattern or if they miss a turkey, they will
Hmm.
never shoot their ammo again.
Yeah.
But they know for a fact that turkey hunters do that. So that's why they make the ammo ballistically superior
Sure.
to upland ammo and waterfowl ammo.
Right. Do you think
Hmm.
that also comes down to part like because I do turkey hunt and I have done all the patterning and all that stuff. Do you think part of that is the fact of just the pure like numbers game, so to speak? Like turkeys, at least here in Washington State, you can shoot I think three in a year.
Yep.
Um, but I mean, and that's it. But like ducks, I mean, it's daily limits seven. Plus I mean, and that's our season goes for months. Same thing with our pheasants and quail and stuff like that, where it's three and I think 10. But either way, like it's just a numbers game too, where you
Yep.
can shoot three pheasants or three turkeys a year versus whatever you shoot in ducks a year.
Yep. It's
It's
a
just a
numbers game because
yeah.
they're obviously selling a lot more duck loads than they are turkey loads, right?
Hmm.
Hmm.
but they need to make sure that the turkey loads are good. Do you think
Right.
that? Do you think for just for one instance, and I said this to one of my good buddies, and he laughed. He was like, "Wow, I never thought of it that way." Do you think that if you took one of the better duck hunting loads in the industry and you went and
Sure.
tried to shoot a turkey at 50 yards, you would kill it? Not even a prayer. You'd be lucky if you even put a pellet in the body at 50 yards.
Yeah,
That's
that's
true.
fair.
You know,
Yeah.
and a duck is smaller than I mean, not smaller than the head and neck of a turkey. I
Sure.
understand that. But I mean, in theory, the vitals of a duck are not much bigger than the head and neck combined of a turkey, right?
Correct.
So why would we not be shooting really good, high quality, ballistically superior ammo at ducks if we're shooting past 40 yards,
Yeah,
just like we would be at a turkey,
that makes sense.
you know?
Yeah, that's
So
makes
that,
a lot of sense.
yep, that it all comes down to the same thing, you know? Keep your velocity below 1300. I prefer 1250 on all my hunting loads. I try to keep that. I used to shoot 1145 to 1160, but
Uh-huh.
then it became pretty impossible to find steel loads, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then I increased to 1300 because, you know, Kent and Remington, they were Rio, they were making 3 inch ounce and 3/8 at 1300, and
Yeah.
those proved back then to be the best.
Right.
Now we've got companies like Flight Day, which are even better.
Right.
But you know, it just comes down to velocity number one, components number two, and then of course choke is intertwined with all of that
Sure.
Yeah.
because the choke is the last thing that touches the shot column before it goes to your target. So the
Yeah.
choke is a lot more important than people aim for it to be.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
have noticed there's a couple like I guess boutique places, I guess, like Flight Day, like Salt Creek. Those
Yep.
guys that are running like the slower velocities, um, heavier payloads typically. I have noticed a lot of those, none of those boutique loads seem to be running into the 14, 15,
Mm-mm.
1600 feet per second stuff. They're always the slower
Absolutely.
loads, which
I, I
I
like
find
to
kind of interesting.
Yeah, I like to pat myself on the back for that one actually. But for the last decade, I've been preaching that to a lot of people, and
Yeah.
in the last 5 years, going on 6 years now, I've been preaching it a lot. And some ammo companies started listening to me, and the two you just mentioned are two of them.
Yeah.
And when they loaded it, even though they didn't believe it, when they finally got to the point where they're like, I'm tired of listening to Jimmy Muller preach this stuff, I'm going to try it. They
Right.
tried it and they were blown away by it. And then they're like, well, that's what I'm doing from now on.
Yeah.
And if people don't believe me, well, I'll send them ammo, let them try it, and then they'll be believers. And that's what's been happening. You know,
Yeah.
the reason that Salt Creek and Flight Day are doing so good is because they're doing exactly what we're talking about. They're using really good components that are not cheap.
Mm-hmm.
They're loading them at a slow rate. They have a very good quality control,
Mm-hmm.
and they have great customer service.
Right.
No, they're not the cheapest, but you can't get the best with the
Right.
cheapest. That doesn't go hand in hand. You
True.
know, you can't own a Ferrari for the price of a smart car, right?
It's true.
So if you want performance, you got to pay for it. If it
It's
doesn't
true.
matter to you, then you don't. But if you want the best, you've got to pay for it.
And
And
keep,
you
go
know
ahead. Sorry.
what they're doing is spot on. Right,
Yeah.
nice heavy payload, as many pellets as you could cram into the hull,
Right.
with the best wad possible to cover the shot,
Right.
with all the other good components, and with the right velocity.
Right.
You know, so
And
that's why they're doing well.
I think if you go back to the whole numbers game thing, like I want to say, I think like Flight Day and like Salt Creek are right around the same price, which I think, let's just say roughly they're $30 a box.
Yep,
And yes, I can buy a steel shot for $12 a box,
yep,
which is fine. But if I have to fire 3 rounds per bird just to drop that bird versus maybe one,
yes,
because I have a higher quality, and it's just like, well, yeah, I just spent $12 on a box, but I had to use all of it to shoot my limit versus I spent slightly more and I still have ammo. It's going back to the numbers game. It's cheaper in the long run just to spend a little bit more money and not really a lot much more. Like especially in this day and age, everything's expensive. So throwing an extra couple bucks at a box is probably better in the long run.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Every year I see this. It's so funny. I can't stop laughing about it because I see it so much, and I've been seeing it for so long. But I'll be sitting on the beach, sea duck hunting with people, or I'll be in a boat hunting with people, and they'll be shooting their gun with whatever choke and whatever ammo, and usually it's not a really good choke, and it's definitely not the right ammo, and they'll be using the wrong shot size or the wrong velocity or both, and whatever, wrong payload, and they'll knock a bird down, and as soon as it hits the water it dives because they hit it with like one pellet,
Mm-hmm.
and it comes up and they're like bang, and it dives and it comes up bang, and like after 5 shots I'm like, take my gun and shoot it, and they take my gun and just waffle it, and they're like, oh my god, what is that? And I'm like, it's basically steel shot with my decoy choke, man. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
or sometimes I'll be shooting my passing at open water,
Sure.
and I'll tell them what I'm shooting. Like, I'll tell them it's a steel 5, and they don't believe me. I have to show it to them, you
Right.
know. And they're like, "Oh my God, I'll never shoot this stuff again. I'm shooting what you're shooting." But it's night and day when you have the right ammo and the right choke. People literally can't believe it.
Can I want to get to chokes a little bit here, but first, can we talk shot shell length? I know Jared
Yeah.
has a strong and justified disdain for 3.5 inch.
Hate
I
them.
think I'm sure you do too, Jimmy, just based on what I understand about it. But what about, like, I mainly shoot 20 gauge, and most shells I find looking for non-tox are 3 inch. There's not a lot of options in 2 3/4. What is there one that someone like me chasing upland birds over fleshing dogs? So the shots are never, they're probably not over 35 yards. Does it really matter between those two? I mean, you get more payload out of the 3 inch sometimes. Sometimes they're both 7/8 ounce, and it's like, what are we doing? But does the shorter shell do anything more to help? I've heard that, but I don't know the facts.
No, so we could talk about this literally for days, okay? So, because this is what it comes down to. It's not about the shell length, it's about the payload, and it's about the shot size and how much the barrel can handle that you're pushing it through.
Right.
Okay. And this is what I mean by that. So, if you're going to shoot 3.5 inch, make sure it's either out of a 10 gauge
Mm-hmm.
or out of a Mossberg 835, 935 Ultimag, because those are the only two bores that can actually handle a 3.5 inch payload if it's an actual 3.5 inch payload, which means if it's steel shot, it's an ounce and 9/16 or an ounce and 5/8. Okay. Ounce and 9/16 is 1.562, 1 and 5/8 is 1.625. Okay. Those are the heavy payloads at 1,300 feet per second that you're going to want to be shooting if you're shooting 3.5 inch. And the only barrels that can handle that are ones that are overboard, which are 10 gauge, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And in a 10 gauge, it's going to be a heavier payload. I'm referring to 12 gauge right now.
Right.
So in a
Yeah.
12 gauge 3.5, a good load is 1 9/16 to 1 and 5/8 at 1,300. And there's only a couple of companies that make that. And if you shoot that out of like a Benelli with a 720 bore,
Mm-hmm.
or an old mobile choke Beretta, or even a REM choke gun, you're going to blow your pattern to crap. There's way, way too much payload and pellets to
Right.
shove through that little pipe. Okay. Think of it like shooting a really extreme heavy payload through a sub gauge. It's the same
Right.
exact scenario. So there is a point in time when too much is not good. Okay. So that gets more into ballistics and science and physics than what most people know. But there's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of that. I've got a lot of that information out there. So basically, in a nutshell, in most 12 gauge guns, ounce and 3/8 payload is the most you want to put through it.
Mm-hmm.
But also an ounce and 3/8 is really great. Okay. Provided you're doing 1,300 or slower.
Yeah.
If you are shooting certain ammo, meaning certain pellet materials, certain pellet sizes with good components, a 2 3/4 inch 12 gauge ounce and a quarter at 1250 to 1275 in a steel load
Hmm.
is absolutely incredible with most guns. And the reason is an ounce and a quarter is going to be a really good square load in a lot of bore diameter shotguns that are out there,
Right.
which is like between 720 and 725, even 730. It's really good. So it's really hard to get something better than an ounce and a quarter at 1250, 1275 in a 12 gauge. Speaking of steel,
Right.
same sort of thing, even with lead, it's about the same scenario. So you don't need a lot of length because let's face it, a lot of longer shells in the industry are
Uh-huh.
not maxed out with payload anyway. And what they do is, they'll take a 3 inch shell and put an ounce and a quarter in it of steel,
Right.
which is ridiculous. And it's only because it's easy to load because
Right.
they've got room. And then they
Right.
put more powder in it and give it more velocity. So
Right.
they give you less pellets and more velocity, which hurt even more.
Hmm.
Yeah,
So, you know,
I think that's the issue. I like specifically like going back because again, like I'm predominantly a 12 gauge shooter. Matt's predominantly a 20 gauge shooter, and I
yep,
think that's predominantly one of the issues. I why I went back to 12 gauge is because not that there's anything wrong with the 20 gauge because I love the 20 gauge, but a lot of 20 gauge, and again, we shoot predominantly non-toxic here because we have to.
yep,
A lot of the 20 gauge stuff is a 3 inch load, 7/8 ounce, which is typically a 2 3/4 inch load, but
yes,
with steel, it's a 7/8 ounce of steel at like
yep,
1,500 feet per second plus.
yeah, not
And
cool.
then, and once you get into like the 2 3/4 ounce stuff, you go to like a 3/4 ounce load, which at that point you're shooting a 28 gauge load, but
Yep,
you're also going at 1,500 feet per second. Like I
yep,
don't think the
again, not
20
cool.
gauge has
Yep,
hit and the sub gauge loads have hit the bigger payload, slower velocity. You can find some 3 inch, 7/8 ounce stuff, which is typically your slower velocity, which is what you want. But it's even worse than the 12 gauge, where it's very few and far between, where all the 20 gauge guys, and to the lesser extent, the 28 gauge, now that the 28 gauge is kind of like hit a resurgence, um, where they're shooting really small payloads, but really, really fast.
yes, exactly. And one thing that's available to us these days that's a blessing is the companies we were talking about before.
Right,
Um, Flight Day offers a 3 inch 20 gauge at an ounce and 16th in
right,
steel at 1250. It's absolutely incredible.
right.
And there's I guess there's a couple other companies now that are doing it as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I used to, before Flight Day came around, I was recommending Apex in 20 gauge because
Yeah,
Apex was the first one to make a 20 gauge at 1 ounce, and
yeah.
they were at 1250. It was incredible. You
Okay.
know.
Yeah, I've actually have pretty good. I've shot Apex 12 gauge stuff, and I like it. It's a little faster than I want, but I do like it.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. The 12 gauge, like you just said, it's a
hmm.
little faster than it needs to be, so therefore you suffer a little bit with it.
Right.
If it wasn't for that, it would have been a much better load.
Yeah.
Yeah, flight day. Yeah, I haven't looked at this. The 20 gauge 3 inch ounce and 1/16, 1250 feet per second. And you can get it in three, four, fives, and sixes in steel. Like
Yep.
that's what I'm looking for. So I'm glad we had this
Yep.
podcast just for that reason alone, because I've been looking
Yeah.
for some shot shells for this year, and that's exactly the specs I had in my mind that I couldn't find really anywhere.
You'll see a tremendous difference. I mean, I was shooting sevens, sixes, fives. I even tried some fours, which I usually don't go with on 20 gauge,
Hmm.
because 20 gauge just doesn't like fours, regardless of ammo. Ammo company, choke, doesn't matter. Fours have never been good in 20 gauge for
Hmm.
whatever reason. But fives, phenomenal. And anything smaller, sixes, sevens, I mean,
Right.
incredible. So you could get away with going with a smaller shot size, increasing your pellet count, and coming out ahead anyway, if
Right.
versus if you're shooting a four.
Man, and I have been shooting fours. I've been shooting four fast steels in my 20 gauge Satori
Yeah.
and upland
Yep.
birds. And I mean, I hit birds, but I've missed birds too. So I don't know if it could be me easily, but it's not helping me, I guess is what you're saying.
No, it's not. And
Good to know.
if like I said, if you go and shoot some water and stuff, you're gonna see exactly what I'm saying.
Hmm.
There's something about it that just is not good. And here's what's funny about it. Even when I was young with my dad, he gave up shooting lead fours out of 20 because it was
Huh.
horrific. And
Interesting.
back then, some of the lead fours he was shooting was really incredible.
Gotcha. Oh, we lost Jimmy. I think he was messing with his computer
I did see that.
and all of a sudden he fell offline. We'll see if he can hop back on here in a second. But Jared, I'm learning a lot. How about you?
Oh yeah, it's nice to like have fun with someone like I guess confirmation bias or whatever the case may be, but it is nice. Um, yeah, it's given me some stuff to think about at least for this year.
Yeah.
Definitely. Hopefully we
Yeah,
can get
it's
him.
at a bare minimum, it's fun talking about this stuff, and maybe even more so for you than me, because I know you think about this a lot. Like you're usually the person I go to for this kind of information, and you're
Right.
very knowledgeable in it, and you kind of know where to point me. Um, and you can tell me stuff like that, like where Jimmy's like fours and 20 gauges don't get along. Like that's literally I've been shooting for 2 years.
Right.
So now I want to try something different. If we're looking at pattern guns this weekend and going out and shooting some targets and some clays and
Yeah.
whatnot. But I'm curious what those fours look like out of my 20 gauge.
Yeah, it's definitely it's nice we got some time before the season starts so we can actually kind of test this stuff. I'm gonna have to buy some more ammo.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
It's not a bad thing. Um,
I think Jamie's coming back on. Looks like
okay.
he's back. All right, Jimmy. Oh, we can't hear you. You think you lost your mic. Still can't hear you. Oh,
Okay, hold
there
on.
you are. Yeah, I think you're
There we
muted or
I
are.
something.
wouldn't believe it, man, but I had my phone plugged in because I
Uh-huh.
told you the problem I had on my computer.
Yeah.
And actually, it just beeped to me and said, you have 3%. It wasn't charging. I don't know why it stopped.
Oh,
Oh,
So I think I got it charging again now. So
okay.
I'm sorry
okay.
about that. So
No
I
worries.
left off. My dad quit shooting lead fours in the 20 gauge because they patterned so horrific.
Yeah.
You
Do you
Yeah.
know,
think do you think that's just like I know when you start getting into like the bigger like past BB and start getting into like the triple Bs and stuff like that, maybe into the Ts with the 12, you start kind of just your just pattern just kind of goes like it just doesn't go great. You think that's just a bore size plus pellet size kind of like just they just don't get along very well?
so so that's a good point that you're bringing up, Jared. So there's a couple things that are really important to understand when it comes to anything larger than like a steel number two,
Mm-hmm.
or a one. And obviously this translates into even, things that are heavier as well, right?
Sure.
Like, lead, bismuth, whatever have you.
Right.
Um, let's just talk about steel for a second because that's what
Sure.
most people use.
Yeah.
I've proven over the years that for any type of game, like size of a pheasant or a duck, you
Mm-hmm.
want to have a minimum of 100 pellets inside a 30-inch circle volume. And I say
Okay.
volume because, if you have 300 pellets, you should have 200 pellets outside the 30 inches, right? You should not have 300 pellets inside a 30-inch circle.
Okay.
So you only need 100 pellets to be ethical on a duck-sized bird or pheasant-sized bird.
Sure.
Call it a grouse, anything like
Yeah.
that. If you're shooting a small bob white, you probably want to have more than that. But for a duck-sized, pheasant-sized bird, 100 pellets in a 30-inch circle, volume or area,
Right.
spacing, call it. A 3-inch ounce and 3/8 steel BB, you will only have 88 pellets in that shell. So that
Gotcha.
means the heaviest steel load that you could shoot in a 12 gauge is going to be inferior and unethical before you even pull a trigger.
Sure.
The only place that you need the energy and penetration of a steel BB
Mm-hmm.
or a triple B is beyond 50 yards.
Sure.
So
Mm.
can you imagine how big the spaces are between the pellets at 50 yards or beyond with something that's only got 88 pellets to start
Right.
when you need 100 to begin with?
Right.
It's just that's really the biggest reason they don't work.
Sure.
If you ever sat in a goose blind in a cornfield and you see a bunch of snow geese and Canada geese running around the field with broken wings, and everybody's chasing them all over the cornfield, that's because they're shooting BBs.
It seems
Okay.
like every goose hunter I know thinks they need 3.5 inch BBs in their Benelli, like Super Black Eagle, Nova, whatever, and it's never added up. Especially if talking to Jared about it, and
Right.
we're just kind of learn about this stuff. I'm like, why are we doing this? But you just think bigger's better. It's a big bird. It needs more, and more is a longer shell and bigger shot. And it
Yeah.
seems like you're doing yourself a disservice. You'd be better off with a 3 inch, maybe two shot.
Yep. So here's the thing to think about. Basically, when you're shooting geese, my dad taught me many years ago, the head is like a teal. So what you do is you focus
Yeah.
on the head and you shoot it like a
Ah,
teal. That way you've got the whole head and neck that you're gonna be shooting at, not the big body that you're seeing,
Sure.
all that, the big wings and all that big body.
Yeah.
hmm.
The reason that most people miss geese is because they just look at this big bird and they shoot way behind it because it's way further and way faster than it looks.
Right.
So, a goose flies by at 30 yards, which is really close. And, you need, let's say 4 feet to 6 feet of lead, and they're giving it like two. And not only are they only giving it two, but they're looking at the body when they're giving it the two. So
Right.
they're usually like aiming at the breast of the bird when they're shooting at it, and they're
Yep.
shooting 4 feet behind it.
Yep.
So,
Gotcha.
so the head and neck of a goose is no tougher than the head and neck of a duck, right?
That's a good
Hmm.
point.
So,
Makes
so
sense.
if you target the head of a goose, you're going to have a much bigger margin of error on your lead,
Sure.
and you're going to end up killing birds a lot better and a lot farther with a lot smaller shot.
Okay. That makes sense.
Last time I shot a steel BB was about 30 years ago,
Okay.
without
That's good to know.
exaggeration.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're getting close. We're taking a lot of your time here today, but it's been, we could talk all night about this. I feel like if we
Oh
were in the
yeah,
bar, we'd
we could
shut it
talk.
down, I
We could
think.
talk about this for weeks, literally.
Yeah.
There's so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. But Jared, do you have any other questions, maybe specifically about his chokes or anything else that we haven't touched on yet?
Yeah, I got a couple if you got a couple more minutes.
Absolutely.
Okay. So going to the chokes and stuff like that, and like I know you typically, at least when I was looking at your chokes, you seem to offer just the three sizes. So, or I guess not sizes is the wrong word, but the three kinds, I guess. You have the decoy, which is what I have, the passing, and the UFO. Um,
Yes.
as I understand it, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the decoy is like you're in the face to about 35 yards ish. The passing is 35 to, I think you said 45, 50 ish. And then the UFO is basically kind of like further than that, and you're like turkey choke. Um, is so what for, like I said, I picked up the decoy choke because that one made sense to me. What do you think that's kind of like the best all around is your decoy choke? Or how do you, or actually a better question, say you run an over and under side by side like a bunch of people, what would you run? What would the combo you run in a two barrel gun?
In a two-barreled gun, I would always run a decoy and a passing.
Okay.
Um, so the way that I gauge my chokes, the way that I developed them and designed them, even though they're the H2O waterfowl hunting choke,
Right.
is sort of named toward ducks and geese.
Sure.
It's basically it's as well at home on all upland and clay targets, right?
Sure.
And when I designed and developed and invented my chokes, I made them that way. I literally started with lead target load shooting clays with them. Then I
Mm-hmm.
went to upland pheasant on towers and controlled atmospheres or
Okay.
controlled scenarios.
Sure.
And then I went to ducks and geese and doves and pigeons and crows and you name it, even deer and big game coyotes and stuff.
Okay.
So I didn't just develop them for ducks, even though they have sort of duck names, decoy passing, UFO.
Sure.
But basically, let's leave the UFO out of it for a second. So
Okay.
the decoy and passing are what I developed for all upland bird hunting, all waterfowl, and all big game. And
Mm-hmm.
the reason for that is the decoy is going to be what I have in my gun anytime I'm hunting upland birds
Okay.
um, or puddle ducks.
Sure.
And then the passing choke is what I'm going to have in if I'm hunting sea ducks and divers, if I'm shooting geese that are not over the decoys, or if I'm shooting like pheasant in the Dakotas or something, right?
Okay.
I'm shooting my passing.
Okay.
So that's the way that I think of it, and it makes it pretty easy for me to decide what I'm going to use.
Sure.
If I'm going out in the salt marsh, I'm using my decoy. If I'm going out into sea duck scenario where I'm hunting scoter, old squaw, eider in big water, I'm going right to my passing. I don't care
Okay.
about the weather. I don't care about the scenario. That's what I'm doing.
Sure.
The UFO I developed later as my turkey choke.
Okay.
I developed that choke when Winchester came out with their Longbeard XR.
Yeah.
I was actually under contract with Winchester for the Longbeard with my choke because they had asked me for some chokes to test along with a lot of other choke companies. After they had tested my choke with their Longbeard, the UFO, they called me a few weeks later and asked if I would go on contract with them because they absolutely loved it.
Right.
So I did a lot of turkey hunting with that choke. Back then, it was a lot of Winchester Longbeard number 5s, and then since then, I've used other ammos as well, a lot of CSS and stuff. But so basically, the UFO choke, which doubles as my strut turkey, it's the same choke, just different color.
Sure.
I use that on duck hunting and upland bird hunting if I'm shooting TSS and I'm shooting beyond 65 yards consistently. That's where the UFO really starts to shine.
Okay.
So you don't want to be shooting big steel shot through a UFO. It's a turkey choke. It's an extra full.
Okay.
So the decoy and passing are really what you're going to want for all of your bird hunting.
Okay. Okay. All right. I do have another question that's not really bird hunting related because I also coyote hunt and do a lot of other stuff with a shotgun.
Yeah.
Where I shoot buckshots, lead BBs and stuff like that. So if you're shooting like let's say 40 plus on a coyote, shooting like lead BBs, or like double aught or number one buck, what would be your recommendation for that?
My passing choke, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah. I developed a passing choke to be law enforcement choke,
Sure.
home defense, and big game. So even if you want to shoot slugs and double up buck through the passing, it's the way to go.
Interesting.
Yeah, the UFO will blow the pattern,
Right.
and the decoy is going to be a little too open if you want to shoot past 40.
Okay.
So the passing falls right in the middle. I've got 3 national champions in 3-gun competition.
Okay.
And they use my passing choke for their precision targets downrange, shooting slugs and buckshot.
Okay. How does your passing choke work with like the federal flight control wads and stuff like that?
Excellent.
Does it? Okay.
Yep. There's no limit with decoy and passing choke. They're the only chokes in the world that have no ammo limits whatsoever.
Okay.
You can shoot steel ball bearings through them, flight control wads, whatever you want.
Interesting.
Yeah, any payload, any velocity, any pellet material, any wad style, doesn't matter.
Huh. Okay. So many more questions now. I think this podcast might go a little longer. We might need to do a part 2, maybe.
We might need a part 2 because I have to teach a class in 15 minutes. So
yeah.
But we could always do more.
Okay. Yeah, we might have to do that. I have a lot more questions.
Yeah. Next time I'll make sure my computer is working.
Sounds good.
It's all good. Well, Jimmy, thanks for coming on and talking. Like, seriously, riveting, interesting conversation. Got me thinking about all the things. I know Jared's doing the same. So we appreciate you coming on. And maybe we'll have to come back for a part 2 because the questions are stacking up for me too. Because
absolutely.
These are all the things that you think about in the field when you're shooting. Like, I wonder if that matters. And you really don't have any way of knowing if you don't have a way to find out. And it seems like you've gone down a lot of these rabbit holes already and have some data to back it up. So it's a joy to talk to you about it.
Thank you. Yeah, what I always tell everybody is, pretty much everybody is over choking. They're shooting pellets that are way too big and they're shooting way too fast a velocity. So those are the 3 major components that are hurting everybody.
Yeah. Like it.
Makes sense. That makes sense. Now you got to find all the stuff to get into that because it's especially the velocity and stuff to find. But I'm glad that we call up the one that I found for my 20 gauge. That's good.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Love
well,
it.
thanks for coming on, Jimmy. Really appreciate it.
You're very
Hopefully
welcome.
we'll talk
Thank
to you
you,
again.
Matt. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks for listening to the Go Flush Yourself podcast. You can continue the conversation on our Discord server. The link is in the podcast description. You can also follow along with Matt and Jared on Instagram and Facebook. If you want to support the podcast, you can subscribe to the Go Flush Yourself on Patreon for the easy monthly cost of only $2. You can also check out our shop and pick up a Go Flush Yourself sticker, shirt, or other merchandise. All links are in the podcast description.